So my name is Rebecca Stahl. I am the interim executive director of Somatic Experiencing International. Thank you all so much for being here today, for coming and learning and being part of a time to work together and support people who have experienced hurricanes. As many of you know, this was inspired by a recent hurricane in Asheville or all of Western North Carolina. It also hit Florida, Georgia, had a few hurricanes here in the United States recently. And if you don't know, Glyndie here was actually in Western North Carolina when it hit. So Glyndie's going to be authoring the webinar today. She is one of our amazing faculty members. Glyndie mostly teaches in the United States, but she also teaches in Croatia. We were both in Europe together at different places, but together at the same time this summer and sharing that experience. So it's really sweet. I just want to give you a little bit of background on Glyndie. And unfortunately, I apologize. I am going to read this because she's so exceptional. I can't memorize this. But Glyndie is a somatic experiencing practitioner, of course, an SE faculty member, and has a master's and PhD in clinical psychology. Her background is as a body worker, yoga teacher, Brennan healing science practitioner, and massage therapist. And for her doctorate, and I'm fascinated by this, she conducted original research into the firsthand experiences of what is healing for Tibetan ex-political prisoners traumatized by war and torture. Conversations with Glyndie are amazing, deep, connected to the world. It's always fun. As a trainer, Glyndie focuses on giving training participants theoretical and practical experience on how to integrate somatic experiencing into various frameworks such as psychodynamic therapies, the psychobiological principles of attachment, traditional cognitive-based therapies, touch-oriented therapies, mindfulness-based practices, and medical occupations. He specializes in assisting others to rediscover how natural nervous system regulation can be. This regulation shifts chronic stress and trauma, attachment ruptures, chronic illness, and allows for new creative and spiritual development. And particularly for today's topic, I think it's really important to think about how to use these tools in new spaces, right? We talk a lot in the SE training about years of work, but this is really a focused piece of that. And I'm really grateful, Glyndie, that you've agreed to do this, that we can make this happen, that we can make it happen quickly. That felt really important. And just want to give a little bit of background as well about SEI. We are a not-for-profit. And so, as you all know, this is a free webinar, and we're honored and grateful to everybody for being here. And we would ask for donations if you're able. Certainly, if you're not, we understand it is still a free webinar. But to be able to continue to make webinars like this available, scholarships, translation, it's not, ideally all of our work would be available not only in English, but our manual is translated into more than 20 languages currently. And we would love to be able to offer more of our webinars and our free programming to people around the world. And so in order to do that, we need to be able to translate them. And as you all know, translation is expensive. We also offer scholarships. We work with new trainings all over the world. SE, for those of you who don't know, is in more than 60 countries. More than 50 countries in the world. We have 65 organizers, the people who run the trainings outside the United States. So we are all so supremely grateful that you are here. When people ask me what I love about SE, it's absolutely the work. It's absolutely the way it can help us think about healing differently. But if the most important thing, I think, is the community. And that is really what we're here to talk about. I am also randomly in Asheville right now. Glyndie and I are actually in the same house, just different parts of it. And which is really exciting. And what I will say is one of the things I've been incredibly struck is the way community comes together. And throughout the world, when there have been natural disasters, human-made crises, watching the SE community come together in various places, and this is a key piece of this, and the growth and the connection of the community, how can people outside of those spaces offer support to those dealing with crisis in that moment? Because I think it's fair to say that all of us at some point are going to be in a space where we experience such crises. We want to know that we have the support. We want to be able to offer that support to others. And, we think of Hoberman Sphere. I almost forgot the name of a Hoberman Sphere. Bad executive director of SEI. And the way it connects us all, right? And how can we be a web of connection throughout the world for each other? And so that's really, I hope, what today can be. Glyndie, I'm just so grateful that this worked out, that you've been so instrumental in bringing the community together here too, and helping to support, making sure that they can continue to support each other. And it's been really an honor to watch and witness from afar, and now to get to see you literally and give you a hug. So thank you for doing this, everybody. Oh, questions, logistics. If you do have questions, please send them to me privately. I'll try to keep track of them throughout and then ask them. There's a lot of people here. I think we're more than 100, there's 128 of us. So just for clarity, send them to me privately. I'll keep track of them. It's not to not ask questions. We just want to make sure we get to all of them. Well, Glyndie, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, it's wonderful to be back in Asheville. I was really touched and moved by how the Asheville community, the Asheville assistant team as well, we have a training here, has connected with their community and connected with each other. So it's been very inspiring for me to see how much connection there is here, and how much that's this beautiful built-in resource to pendulate with, right? To use some SE terminology here. With the overwhelming aspects of the storm, there is a tremendous amount of silver lining in that community. It's one of the things that's the most resourcing for me too, as a human being, and SE is, when there's a crisis somewhere, people want to help, and SE people are incredibly capable, and it's a beautiful thing. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what I'm going to share today, which is that where I'm going to focus what I'm talking about more short-term intervention work. Okay. This is for all practitioners, and whether you're a body worker or if you're a therapist, mental health practitioner. And the goal of this is to really support the reduction of shock, and help people to ground, right, orient, resource, so that they're actually getting more regulation. It's often a more incremental stepping down of into settling, because for many of you who've been in hurricanes and been in natural disasters, there's often a lot of reminders. There's a lot of need and call for continued mobilization, for safety, right, for helping others. So how do we navigate that when it's not like it's just a one and done thing? There's often after the hurricane that, the research out there is saying how it can actually really impact our health for years afterwards. So I'm going to share screen here, and I'll just start here. Okay. So I am faculty of Somatic Experiencing International. Okay. And we're just talking about somatic tools for resilience after hurricanes. So what are some of the things that you've been experiencing or remember experiencing yourself if you've been in a hurricane? Okay. And how about for your clients? They may be feeling one or more of some of these. It may be hard to feel your body, even if you're always in a flurry of motion, taking care of other people, right? Getting people gas, helping people to get electricity, right? Giving people rides. There can be a quality of hovering or floating above the ground. Anyone relate to that one? Okay. Also, another one, not being able to get your energy going. You're groggy all day, or it feels like things don't feel real. Anyone for that? Yeah, I bet you have clients who are experiencing these. Maybe you only feel okay when you're doing something and engaged in repairing, volunteering, or some sort of physical activity, right? That mobilization part. That's actually really essential when we have that survival energy from that shock to use that energy. But we can also get stuck on and have a hard time. It can get glitchy with that cycle between doing that sympathetic activation, right? That arousal cycle, and allowing that to complete, allowing ourselves to go, I think it's time to rest a little bit. This is where it can actually complicate our own nervous system resilience if we don't find a way to balance between these two impulses. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, emotions may be unavailable. We may have a sense of numbness. And then there also can be a lot of emotional overwhelm, feeling hopelessness, helplessness, dread, anger, fear. So getting reminded of the hurricane brings fight and flight or freeze responses. Okay. There's some estimates that say, after hurricanes, about 30% of people have post-traumatic stress. This is true for for me, even though I was not much happened for me in Boone, but we were in the hurricane. We lost power and water. There wasn't much damage to the building I was in. But I kept dropping my glasses. I kept dropping things. Okay. So people can also be accident prone. I kept hearing about people who were driving in a maybe not safe way, people who are feeling like they're walking, but they're not in their feet, they're not in their bodies. It's, as you can imagine, this kind of discoordination can cause additional injuries. And that's also what's borne out in the research, right? People have more accidents in the years after. Okay. People get confused, distracted, irritable, right? Some of that fight response might start coming through in some of our relationships. And that's not just immediately after. Okay. And very hard to focus attention on one thing. Short-term memory can get worse, and we can have word finding difficulty. Anybody relate to that? And then difficulty in planning or doing your usual work or hobbies. Okay. This is not an exhaustive list. It's more just what people are sharing with me, clients and just people that I'm meeting. It's actually quite nice to feel the sense of connection here. People are sharing and talking with each other, sharing each other's stories. And I don't know one conversation I've had where they're not touching on the beauty of the community and the connection. So that's a huge resource that we can pause and track in the body, track in the nervous system. All right. So here's 2 basic SE questions, just as a reminder for everybody to pause your client with and pause ourselves with, right? Which will help prevent that dive into the trauma vortex. Okay. And it will help support awareness in the present moment and also to shift away from those traumatic focusings that happen on the hurricane reminders to come back to the present. So here it is, very simple. And as you share that, what you experience in your body now. Okay. So pausing, moving out of the story and getting into the present moment. This is how we can support people's nervous systems to get the message that the trauma isn't happening now. Second, can you notice the outer edge of that sensation, whether it's anger, heat, tension, and see what's happening next in your body? So really taking time to titrate, working with a small amount of that charge, because it's people are overwhelmed. We need to help them to be with the charge so that it can release, so that shock can release and they can come back into more present moment regulation. But we have to chunk it down for them. So the goal here is to create the conditions to come back into the present moment. And part of that is releasing the shock. Okay. It is short-term work, as I said, to release the shock. Okay. and come out of hypoarousal, which we often think about as being stuck on off, which also could be called freeze or shut down, and hyperarousal. So that high sympathetic nervous system being stuck on, being a flurry of activity, not knowing how to stop. So number one, grounding, orienting, and resourcing are the first tools that we use. And we will often do this without story. And there's plenty to work with here. Much shock can release just from connecting to the ground and orienting, because in the experience of natural disasters in general and with hurricanes, we're actually often touching on reminders, okay? Orienting outside, orienting to the ground. Can I trust this ground after a mudslide? Can I trust nature? So supporting somebody with this, there's a few things to think about. So it is true, we can shift the parasympathetic to that rest and digest. And once people settle enough, right, then you can do and work with that, touching into some of the traumatic elements later in the session you're doing. But after the act of, after hurricanes, the act of grounding or orienting can actually increase arousal rather than create settling. So we want to just work with a small amount of that. Okay, that's really important. And yeah, you can make titrate that, work with just a little bit of charge, work with the outer edge of that. Ask, can we work with 1% of that, or shift from sensation to image? And it's also really, we do want to support people, because this is short-term work, to actually work with that activation, because that's going to help them to be able to get back more into present moment functioning, okay, and regulation. Okay, if we can, resourcing first in ways that are settling is great. Sometimes it's not so available. Sometimes you actually need to help them to release, right, some of that activation first. Okay. And on resourcing, connecting with moments that are resourcing, especially in terms of connecting with the support of other people, because nature may not always be the resource for many people. It could be, that there's awe with that nature. However, it could also be, there can be a shift, and we'll see in a demo. I'm going to share with you a demo with a wonderful SEP named Stacy Butcher, who offered to be part of the demo. So I'm going to share with you some video of working with her, and you'll see that with her orienting. So here's an example of that. Remembering the relief when learning a good friend is okay. So we want to pause these moments and really mind the relief part, because the trauma part, the trauma vortex part, easily just takes over. Okay. Or just feeling what is that like to remember the connection, that camaraderie that you felt when volunteering. Okay. That actually brings a really strong vagal influence that can support the reconnection to the parasympathetic. So you may need to pause them from jumping too deeply into the trauma vortex. So be active with that resourcing. Remind them not to isolate, to reach out to friends, and also to reduce news consumption. Even at this point, a month after the hurricanes, a month after Helen anyway, people can still be caught in that trying to find the danger through the news. Okay, if you could just stay with the facts, right? Meaning connect to the news if you need it to be oriented to what you need to do and to connect with your family. Okay, so with grounding, remember, trust in nature has been disrupted. Find the present moment connection to gravity and the ground. Okay. So because they may not feel the ground, right, just support them. And this is just a general exercise here. Just stand or sit with very slow leg movement, pressing into the ground, bending the knees. Okay. And ask them, what tells you your feet are there? Is there a weight? Is there a pressure? Is there a temperature? You may find that they have a hard time finding their feet. Okay. Give them some time with that. Okay. Awareness will start to move downward. It will be because of the influence of freeze on their system. You just want to be patient. Keep them just with a really slow, gentle movement in the ankles, and shock will begin to release through the legs and feet. Pause the movement to track sensations, and then also ask, how does it feel overall? And overall in the body, to notice that benefit, and maybe a slight bit more of presence is there. Feeling into the body or sensing the weight just a little bit more. So, and as I mentioned earlier, sometimes grounding is hard as survival energy is high. So they may need to mobilize that fight or flight response and feel into that impulse to do something. And that often can help them to ground and to settle. So I'm going to share with you Stacy Butcher and I doing some demo work. And this first part is about connecting with the ground. And Stacy is a somatic experiencing practitioner. She's also an open floor dance teacher who's taught around the world. She's a mover. She's a very embodied person. And so it was really wonderful for her to share the impact Helen had on her. She lives here in Asheville. So she was very much here for the hurricane. Here she is.
That's I've never experienced that. I'm going to take my socks off even just to feel have like a purple shag carpet there. But yeah, it's so interesting to feel it, and I feel the texture and the carpet, but I've never had that sensation before where it still feels like, oh, I'm not sure the ground is there. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, and as a dancer and as a mover, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really foreign feeling. That's usually right where I go, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay. But I do feel the support of the couch and the pillows behind, so it's an interesting. It's almost like I'm feeling the ground somewhere else rather than down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just taking in where you experience them. Let your eyes, noticing the eyes, looking around, just to take in the room with your eyes.
Yeah, I feel grateful. I have a lot of art and color and beautiful things to look at. So that's really helped me through this whole thing. Like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there something, a particular color or a particular piece of art that's calling you?
Yeah, I have a stained glass piece that hangs in the window, and it's just got this really bright red that I'm really noticing. It's funny because there's like red and blue and yellow, different colors, but the red is really standing out. And just the way the light's coming through it right now.
I'm just going to pause it there. So it's interesting what we get attracted to. It is actually not uncommon that people are more attracted to red and yellow and orange because those are often connected to a lot of the sirens and a lot of the things that you've had to become aware of during an emergency, right? The sirens, right? Stop signs, flashing lights, and that kind of thing. Really gets the attention. So I have more clips to share with you further into this demo with Stacy. Here's a picture of Asheville. Such a beautiful place. So on the orienting response, interrupted orienting happens when we experience something, of course, like a hurricane or any kind of natural disaster. Okay. And what do we mean by interrupted orienting, right? So we're trying to orient to the danger and to the scale of it, where it's coming from, right? How much time we have, how we can be safe. And when you are dealing with such a huge impact from nature, like a hurricane, it's overwhelming. And essentially, we can't really fully orient to what it is. We're orienting in moments and with snippets based on our own experience, but it's easily something that can cause a frozen startle and a interrupted orienting. So oftentimes you will see that people are stuck in a frozen startle, and you'll see in a moment, say she's sharing her orienting to the outside, and she some startle gestures show up, and you'll see it also in the neck, right? A pulling back in the neck. And so we slow these things down to help the system release out of the startle. The eyes and the autonomic nervous system really want to locate the threat. So oftentimes you'll see that the eyes are scanning broadly, and it's hard for them to stop moving. So we slow down the eye movement and take in something that's easier to be with. Inside may be better during a hurricane, just because moving trees and branches of the sky could be activating. But you could also locate things on the ground that are stable outside. Allow them, really encourage them to land on something, and then you pause and notice the effect it has on the body. Okay. And if it's activating, allow it to deactivate. Okay. And then track it, release it. And remember, deactivation could be heat, trembling, tingling, the experience of more space, a feeling of settling down into the body, also energy moving out through the arms and legs and potentially up through the head and the neck. Take time with it. Okay. As I said, the weather outside, sky, also images of water could be activating if there was flooding, right? And you can also, if it, that deactivation doesn't happen, right, just shift what you're orienting to. Shift their orienting to the inside, for instance. A reminder here, bracing in the head, the neck, and the shoulders, and the eyes, right, are all part of that interrupted orienting. So you work with one part of it and support that to deactivate. And what do we call that in SE? We call that uncoupling, right? These overcoupled elements that can keep us stuck in that frozen orienting response. So I'll share Stacy orienting to the moving branches, and the memory is stimulated of the hurricane's movement in the trees. And you'll see the neck and arms express the frozen startle.
It's a little like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, like just seeing there's a bush and it's just swaying just a little bit, but it just really caught my attention like it wouldn't before,
Yeah, and we want to make room for that too, right? Because
Yeah,
there's some hesitancy for looking, what I'm hearing you say is looking out the window
mm-hmm,
and a little pulling back, right? Of
mm-hmm,
caution.
yeah,
Yourself have that movement.
mm-hmm.
And where there's a little bit of a movement with the neck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
A little pulling back that you were doing earlier, right?
mm-hmm, yeah.
And is that kind of a
Yeah.
hesitancy to take in? Is it a guardedness? What association?
Feels like a little bit of a garden, like a just being ready. Like I can see the beauty in the stained glass, but I'm ready. Like a
Yeah.
bracing, not heavy bracing, but just like just a little,
Orienting and ready. Yeah. And
yeah,
let yourself
yeah,
feel that hand too, right? You're right here.
yeah,
Yeah. Just in
mm,
connection with your intelligent neck, right? Just
right. Mm.
how does that feel for your neck? I noticed that another breath came through.
Mm-hmm.
Readiness.
Yeah. And it's like I can feel that, even that's a little neck movement, like down through my spine. Like I can feel it kind of going in. Like I feel the support of the pillow with going with the movement a little bit, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you notice that movement of the pillow with that,
Mm-hmm.
how is that?
There's a comforting feeling to it. Just this kind of, okay, I'm okay. You know?
Right. Yeah. So something's comforting, feeling of I'm okay as you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling that connection to the pillow.
Mm-hmm.
Pause there. More to come.
It's a little like,
Yeah. So we also want to work with completing the orienting and the fight flight responses that show up. Okay. And we have um, a memory that's in the brain, the body of the input, the emergency input at that time. And we want to facilitate that survival energy to release. So we can invite, what does the body want to do? What do the arms want to do? When you're feeling that movement in the arms or in the neck, what do you imagine the body wants to do next? So that often can help elicit that in a more organic way. Also, it's really important to establish when they knew they were going to be okay, because a big part of their nervous system may still not know, even if cognitively they know they survived. So at what point did you know you were going to survive? And that might also be okay. Maybe surviving wasn't a question. Okay. And then pause to notice how the body's responding to being reminded of those things. Okay. And that helps the body to release some of this charge. So part of what we're doing is supporting the ability to witness the body. Okay. So an example, just saying, that's it. Just noticing the tingling in your arms right now. Okay. And also a little psychoeducation that shaking, trembling, tingling, or heat, all these deactivation signs are actually good for the nervous system, not something to be scared of. So saying something like, yes, shaking is good for your nervous system. Can you let that happen? Can you notice it from the inside? That helps it to not feel so overwhelming. Okay. And then asking them as they're so they can stay with the present moment experience. And what are you noticing now? Oh, and is the heat spreading? Which direction is it spreading? So, in addition to the heat, trembling, and tingling, sometimes deactivation comes through tears. So, normalizing that could also come through laughter, nervous laughter, outbursts of laughter. Could also come through other emotional outbursts that we get curious about, and then we would want to slow those things down and be able to release some of the tension that's part of that, part of the emotion that's there. So we bring awareness to it so the brain gets a message that it can continue to release shock, that it's okay. There's not a need right now to continue to mobilize, or at least not to the degree during the hurricane. So tension, an impulse to yell, to fight, to run away, the welling up of grief, feeling irritable, grumpy, right? And also fretfully worrying are all signs of survival energy that wants to complete, it wants to release. So watch where the body is moving, or bracing. That looks like it's getting ready to do something, and invite a movement or imagine one. If your legs could do anything right now, how would you imagine they would want to move? Oftentimes that will help them to start to connect with this energy, this impulse level. And that's really essential to allow the nervous system to let that deactivation occur. And if you don't get a deactivation from that, invite them to just very slowly move their arms or their legs slowly. Yeah, and help them to feel more connected to their torso, feel more empowered, right? And remember too, you want to teach your clients from what you're doing in sessions that they can also come out of freeze on their own and out of hyperarousal, because they will be getting triggered oftentimes many, many times, being in the cleanup, right? Being in the community. You're in a collective trauma field ongoingly that will spike your adrenals and bring you back into that emergency consciousness. So you have to support them in finding ways to differentiate and create some boundaries and feel a little bits of settling in their own systems and find ways to do self-care. Okay. Now, this is the question that I was sharing with you. Here's a couple of people who are helping out on a river, getting creative with their form of transportation. So I mentioned this already. At what point did you know you're going to survive or be okay? Okay. So lots of benefit can come from noticing those successful efforts and to escape. Okay. And then tracking that in the body. How did it feel when you got your kids to safety? When did you feel like you're out of danger? Right? As you replace your deck that was damaged, what do you feel now? Right? Who helped you with that? So remind them of the connections to any sense of relief. Pause and track it in the body. There can be an explicit experience of okayness that happens with collective connection. Okay? Really help them to feel and savor those parts of it. Also can be a part that kind of stimulates, right, the hurricane reminders, but just savoring those really positive ventral vagal elements. Also supporting them with, how is it to say that I'm alive? I'm alive and I survived. I'm alive and I survived and others didn't. Really tracking through that and helping to work through some of the grief. Here's some photos, people helping. Okay, so you want to stabilize if your clients get overwhelmed. Choose one of these. Ground, orient, resourcing to a memory of or image. Okay. Work with an easier place in the body to be with. Shift into an image rather than sensation. Shift away from the difficult experience. Allow the system time to settle. Okay. Notice and slow down sensations, image, and emotions. Okay. Work with a tiny amount. Less is more. Just general reminders, everyone. Okay. So in terms of savoring the resource of community, and also Stacy will talk about, I'm not sure if she coined it, but she's talking about hurricane brain. Maybe some of you can relate to this one if you've been experienced this. You were sharing earlier about feeling something more in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just more fullness. And actually I had just touched this thing. Sorry, I'm just gonna have a disclaimer about hurricane brain.
Hurricane brain, you heard it first here.
Hurricane brain, yep. Which is so hard for a Virgo. I'm usually on it, and I'm like, what's that thing called? But I'm feeling like the coolness of my hand on my chest. Yeah, like I just feel like I can feel again in this, at least from here up. Like my feet still don't quite feel full, but this up here I feel like I'm inhabiting under my skin, up to my skin.
Yeah, so there's some inhabiting here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And don't worry, you can just point to an area. We don't need to know anatomical parts.
I know there's a lot of that in town. We're like, okay, it's a new language here. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, it feels good to kind of smile about it, and the camaraderie of being in stupidity together.
Yeah, and that connection, it sounds like I know when we talked before, you were sharing about the community efforts and
Yeah, it's been, oh my God, so amazing. Yeah, really. And we did there was a vigil, a candlelight vigil in the park in Asheville on, was it 2 nights ago, I guess? Oh my God, it was amazing. And the mayor spoke and council members, and every single person cried. And they had a choir sing as we lit candles, and everybody's just crying and hugging each other. And it was so beautiful. Like they just really caught the spirit of what's going on, and where they were calling it the city of heroes because people are showing up for each other so much, and it just, you could feel it,
see the
yes,
I'm gonna pause that. You can see the expansion that's happening through her chest, right, with her breath as she's describing this, right? There's more spaciousness. Yeah. You were so in addition, what we're often working with is the struggle in the nervous system between mobilizing to help yourself, to help your family, to help your community, right? And there's a huge adrenal push that happens from the shock in that, and then resting down. So there's this conflict that we often see in all kinds of trauma between sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so we want to just work with one side and pause, slow things down. Okay, work with one of these conflicting impulses. So I'm just calling them the doing and being for now, right? The doing, I need to get out, I need to volunteer, I got to support, I got to reach out, I got to check on everybody. I want to use that energy, right, to help others. I'm part of this collective, let's go. And so it can have a lot of flight in that, and also fight. Feel the impulse, slow it down, and feel the life force underneath there. Remember to use imagination or invite them to notice what the body wants to do, as we talked about already, right? And there may often be a movement that wants to happen, to get away, to fight, to protect, to stand one's ground. Yeah. So here's an example from someone that shared that with me. I was asking them, with your arms in the air like that, what does your body want to do to protect your parents' home, right, from the river? And the response was, I want to make, this is the image that came, I want to make a fort of massive sandbags as big as a car. And I have the arms and legs of a giant to move them, right? And then with that kind of imagery, a really amazing imagery will come. Just have them follow that and how it feels in the nervous system. It's not just a fantasy, it's the nervous system releasing bound survival energy. And following that will be a dropping into the lower body, and then more release of pressure from the chest or belly, or both. Okay. Oftentimes with the doing, it will naturally shift back to the impulse to rest. So they might be fighting the impulse to rest, and then you work with some of the mobilization, and then they settle down a bit. So that can really support things a lot. Okay. If they get floaty with that resting down, okay, or feel a little bit sleepy, you can just support them with connecting to the ground. Now, in terms of being, resting down to renew, right, to regenerate, to be more in the restorative states of being, conserving energy, rest and digest, and sometimes collapse happens with this. Okay, sometimes they can be a little hazy, might go into some high tone dorsal. So support the rest and digest response, right? And just notice sometimes the sympathetic will reassert itself. Just normalize that too, and then allow it to complete. Remember, a lot of people are terrified that if they really let down, they're going to get depressed and start to feel the helplessness or hopelessness underneath, to really take in the effects this has had on their home, on their family, on the community. The grief starts to happen. So, be gentle with that when they're moving back and forth between the doing and the being. Okay. So yeah, and that alternating between mobilization and being stuck, right, on, right, and then going into the stuck on off, right, is very, very human. So just normalizing that. So here's a wonderful sharing about the medicine of community from Stacey. Each other's needs, you know,
Yeah.
being in
Yeah.
and caring for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what are you noticing now? What are you aware of now
Mm-hmm.
in your system?
Mm-hmm.
Noticing these deeper breaths coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel it's almost like I kind of feel myself coming back online. Um, just thinking about the support of friends and um, yeah, because I was feeling a little like right before we got online, I was feeling really disconnected, and I just have these times when I'm like, what? And I even just went to the gym to okay, let me get in my body, and I'm like, I can't. And
Yeah.
yet, the real medicine is like, oh, my friends and the community, and thinking about that right now feels like it's bringing me back to here. Yeah,
Big medicine.
it really is.
What a beautiful thing to have that, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't, yeah, like you were sharing, I don't think that's always so available and
Yeah,
all the time, depending where it is.
yeah.
It's really pause there. Each other's needs. So we'll share a little bit here on the conflict between, right, those two post-hurricane impulses, resting down and mobilizing to help.
Right now of okay, you rest, I got it. Okay. Yeah.
Notice the gesture,
Yeah, so
right? Notice the gestures. You rest, I got it, right? When you start to see these movements showing up, just invite them to slow it down is one way to work with that.
how's the rest been when the resting down happens?
It's been more of a collapse rest than anything. Like I get in these like the first day that I had, because the first couple days was like volunteer, check on my neighbors, let's feed each other, and what's in our freezer that's going bad. And probably day 4, I could not get off the couch. It just was, sleeping, crying, just collapsing. Um, yeah, and when I could, because I think about, I would say this to clients, right? Too. I'm like, okay, what advice would you give yourself? Because when I was fighting it, like I should be, it was horrible. But when I could just be like, I just need to rest and be here and be frozen, like that's okay right now. Like, can I just? And in those moments, I felt like I could relax into the couch and just kind of let it hold me.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
but a lot of guilt, and I'm like that definitely is, and a lot of people. What is the phrase everybody's using is guiltitude. Like we're great, the gratitude, but then guilt that we're not, that we survived, or that we're not out volunteering when we need to take care of ourselves, or
Mm,
So when I am resting, there's always a little bit of I should, but oh, I could, but then when I do relax into it, it just feels so good to just like I just need to rest, you know.
and how great to allow that to happen, even though it can be a little
Yeah,
choppy sometimes, right? To
yeah, definitely.
allow the rest when this other impulse, right, is
Yeah,
there. I need to go help.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so early on you're saying like day 4 it was hard to get out of bed. There was
Mm-hmm.
collapse in
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
how is it just right now in your system, how
Mm-hmm.
is it just thinking about rest? I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm. It's twofold. It's kind of there's this yes, no, like oh, rest sounds so good, but there's almost more of a pull in this moment of I gotta do, if gotta take action, gotta do something. Um, yeah, like, and it's funny because this morning I just wanted to rest for sure, but I went to the gym, which I was proud of myself for doing.
So you did go to the
Um,
gym, even though it
I
felt
did.
weird. You're saying the body wasn't quite ready for that, or
Yeah, I just, I've made a commitment. It's a dance kind of exercise class that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I've committed. I'm like, I don't care how I feel. That's the one normal thing right now that I can do now that it's open again. So, and it does help to get me a little bit in my body. Today was just a harder for some reason to feel it. But in general, I always feel a little more here and like, okay, I can deal. And it's all the same people we all are there together every time. So, yeah, but there are days, yeah, where I can't. It's like, okay, I'm just kind of going through the motions, but yeah, it's a weird, I mean, I know this is normal too, but it's a weird feeling to, especially for me, to be dancing and not feel my body. I'm just kind of going through the motions. So, okay, I'm going to move and try to feel better, or just get some energy moving. And
There can be a lot of normalizing, supporting just incremental resting down. Okay. And connecting with accessing the body might be difficult, right? You ask and invite a little connection with body, and they're sensing into, they may be sensing into it a little bit. And it may be a lot of sharing of words and just pausing when you can to support them to rest down a little bit.
right now,
So there can often be a lot of feelings about the forces of nature. Okay. It could be a mix of awe and dread, right? With that feeling of power that's happening that they experience, right? And while there can be a lot of activation with that, it also can have a quality of opening to kind of a deeper resource at the same time, but you still want to really titrate this. And with Stacy, what started as activation when orienting to movement shifted right to something that was happening on the inside regarding the hurricane wind. Okay. So you'll often see this. Okay. So working with the forces of nature, allowing the internalized hurricane wind to pendulate.
we're serving spaghetti to everybody, but come to the brewery and have a beer, and we're doing a fundraiser for this or that. And then they'll have music. And so there's this real aliveness that's happening. And when something's happening, everybody's there because we're looking for that normal, and it's so nice. But then the next day, I've been calling it the normal hangover. It's almost worse because it's like, oh yeah, life is back. And then you kind of go, oh yeah, it's not. So there's just such this ping ponging of the grasp at kind of normalcy, and then nothing is normal.
Yeah, and as you're saying that now, what are you aware of in
Hmm. Hmm. It just feels like it almost just feels like a whirling of confusion, like not confusion like thoughts about it, but just kind of an energy of confusion somehow in my body.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it feels like this kind of movement in my
So notice the gesture. Yeah, what does that remind you of? Okay, so whirling.
torso.
Yeah, so kind of movement inside, or is it also kind of outside? Is it
Feels like it's just inside.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
As you're sensing that movement, okay, there's a little deeper breath coming.
Mm-hmm.
Just see what happens next as you're aware of that. This is so normal, as I know you know,
Mm-hmm.
but being in the middle of that, right? These conflicting
Yeah.
impulses, right? To help, to
Mm-hmm.
not help, to feel a little bit of normalcy, and then to be
Mm-hmm.
reminded, right?
Right.
How much has changed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. All of a sudden, it's like it felt like the wind, like I could feel the intensity of it, not in a way that I can't bear, but just whoa, um, uh, almost like the feeling is kind of matching that energy of the storm, as it was moving through, not moving through, hovering over, actually. Felt like it was here for quite a while.
Mhm. Yeah. And as you're noticing that, how are your feet doing?
Yeah, they're definitely feeling the carpet. They're still have that same. Yeah, I feel a little bit more of the floor actually.
A little bit.
Um,
It's okay. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I don't feel like they're hovering, but they don't feel really, but I'm moving them a little bit, and there's still a little tentativeness, but it feels like they're a little bit more connected to the ground.
So that's that's a win. Okay. So incremental shifts in the awareness in the body. Really want to notice that and track that. Appreciating those little shifts. So a little bit, not so much hovering. Okay. I'm just going to turn this back on.
Hmm.
And that breath looked like it filled the back a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like it's almost like before I was feeling up here, and I feel like kind of the whole torso now feels online, like it's here, and even can feel my hips a little bit more. Hmm.
Yeah, so the whole torso now,
Mm-hmm.
even your hips.
Yeah,
Yeah, take some
yeah, and
time.
it almost feels now like that energy's still moving, but it feels like it's also coming out now as well. It's not just inside the body.
So more coming out. This,
Yeah, but it's like there's space for it in a way, so it's a more spacious feeling. Yeah, not like it's taking me over, but just
yeah,
there's
just
more space for it to move. Yeah,
more space.
yeah. And there's this sense of like with that movement that I'm safe, like I'm here and I can feel the movement. It's not taking me away or
Mhm.
I'm here and just allowing somehow.
Yeah, so it's not taking you away. You're just
Hmm.
allowing it to do what it needs to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so she's really directly working with, right, that survival energy that she's feeling as this whirling like the hurricane wind, and allowing it to have space to do what it needs to do. Okay, to help it to settle, and she's getting more integrated and she's getting more connected to her lower body.
We're serving.
Okay. So more about the conflicting impulses, right? To surrender or to stay alert here. And we're working with self-touch a little around just using one's own hand to provide support. If you are a touch practitioner, touch can be a tremendous support. You're online, so you're working with self-contact. So completing rather than just feeling those competing impulses.
Yeah, there's almost like a surrender, a peaceful surrender. Um, it's funny, right when I said that, I noticed my neck was almost just locked up. That was really interesting. Just like, whoa. Hmm.
Yeah, and here, peaceful surrender, and then one
Hmm.
part of us goes, "Ooh,
Yeah.
gotta stay alert."
Hmm.
'Cause-
Yeah.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
you've been
Right.
needing to do that, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
tired, and then I'm also orienting to, safety and other people's
Hmm.
safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you're noticing that, can you feel that surrender part a little bit still? Is there still an echo?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So just honoring that surrender's here and that wariness is here too, right? Or
Right.
and
Yeah.
you can I'm curious how it would be to just, if you would like to do a little touch support.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Oh God, I need a massage.
could,
Oh,
and
yeah.
next, even in the best of times, right? Or
Yeah.
working, right? Whether we're at the
Yeah.
working hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've definitely felt that this whole time. But there was something about that moment. It was like, whoa, hello, there you are.
Mm.
Oh gosh, wow. And it's funny. I just as I did that, I had this, uh, um, I guess, feeling and image in a way of like it felt like this, but it was almost like my neck was a tree trunk bending.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, there's something about I was so struck by the strength. Like there were two huge oak trees in the back that came down the hill, and it was like I heard what the first one crack, and then saw the second one come down, and it was just this. But it just felt like I don't know. I just thought of those trees just then, feeling like something that's so what's the word I want to use? Like kind of feeling the tightness of the neck, but also the force that bends it, that can bend it.
Yeah. And how is
I
it
don't know
to
if that's
feel
making
that
sense.
the ability for your neck to bend and flex like a mighty oak?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good. It feels like to be at that place where it's not breaking, right? It's actually okay. I think
Yeah.
that's the
And
thing that
not
struck
going
me. It was almost
beyond
like the
that.
tree breaking. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Mm,
here we have, the neck can flex and
yeah.
and you've also really been impacted by, right, seeing nature
Yeah.
so compromised. Yeah,
Yeah.
trees
Yeah.
really, many of them did break.
Yeah.
So in your
Yeah.
own tree here, your own spinal
Hmm.
tree,
Yeah. Yeah.
now how that feels to just have
Mm.
just a little bit of flex
Hmm.
without having to go to that breaking point, right?
Right. Right. Mm. Yeah, it's good. There's almost a restoration of faith or something that, okay, not everything's going to fall over and break.
Mm. Yeah, not everything is going to fall over and break. And
Mm,
So when we see uh, trees, right? We see break, we see how homes destroyed, we see people hurt. We really internalize that. Right? And this is a really great example of that, how inside her own tree of her spine, she was experiencing that. And that's part of the bracing that's been in her system. Okay, so one more piece here to share, and then we're going to go to questions. So we're working with the activation when she used to live in the town of Marshall, which was uh, devastated, as many of you probably know, right? So working with activation of seeing some of this footage and allowing it to deactivate.
but I saw a video of a guy walking, and he went and he turned the camera inside each plate, like the coffee place I used to hang out in. It's like totally gone. Oh, here's the nothing.
yeah.
So
So
it was just, and then he walked by my apartment. It's like, wow, okay, yeah.
apartment too. Yeah.
I mean, I was upstairs, so I would have been okay, but the downstairs was totally wiped out.
And so
Yeah,
I'm wondering if it would be okay just as you're remembering seeing that footage, right, of the
yeah,
really let your
yeah,
eyes register that, let your body
yeah.
just
Mm.
register that and just notice what's happening in your system as you remember those images. Coffee shop.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, I really feel it in my heart. Like, yeah.
Mm. What do you
And it's
notice?
almost like I feel a little, like I feel it, but I also feel something kind of stopping me from getting there. Like, whoa, don't even, that's too much. I mean, I've had moments of feeling it, but in this moment, I'm like, oh,
Yeah. And then
I
just
don't
feel,
know.
and now just feel if that's okay, just to notice just your hand on your chest, just
Yeah.
letting go of the image, letting go, just feeling the support of your hand here. How does the hand feel?
Feels good. Like I feel the warmth. Like it was cold before on my skin, but now it's really warm. And it's again, it kind of like, okay, I'm here. I'm okay.
Yeah, how is it to just feel I'm okay right now? There's shocking images, shocking changes, right?
Hmm.
And then other parts are okay and intact, like we
Yeah.
were right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your body.
Yeah.
How is it just to notice the I'm okay in your body now?
Yeah. It feels, I'm just feeling warmth throughout my torso.
So warmth in the center of the torso. Did you say like out to the side?
Actually, I'd say up, yeah, in the upper part. I went like this, but I think it's more really just in the upper part here. And keeping wanting to clear my throat. Something's stuck there.
Yeah. So just letting the warmth spread wherever it wants.
And I feel it's like my heart feels, it's so hard to describe. Like I can feel it beating.
Heart's beating.
Yeah, but in a weird way. I don't know how to describe it. Like it almost feels a little jaggedy. It's not intense, but like in the midst of the warmth, there's just kind of this, like, yeah, not just a normal heartbeat like that, but yeah, there's a,
So a more jaggedy heartbeat.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's part of how the heart is, deals with this kind of shock, right? There can be a little
Yeah, 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 because there's a feeling of it doesn't feel real. Like there's some moments when it feels real and I can feel it, and right now it's like when I think of the video, it's like watching a movie. Like, yes, I used to hang out in that coffee shop, but that's not real. That's a movie set, you know. Sorry.
and that's a nice protective thing that happens too.
Yeah, yeah,
When we
yeah,
like, well, okay, I can't quite relate to that. It's very hard to take in all these things, and we don't have to take all of it
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
It
the,
also feels important for me to take it in for just for me personally. Like when I see it, like it's heartbreaking, but it in a way it brings me closer to what happened. Even though it's heartbreaking, like when the first time I went down to the River Arts District, it was like, oh my God, like a place I hang out a lot. But at the same time, it settled my system in a weird way
Mhm.
to actually not just be seeing pictures of it. I mean, it was worse than what you see in pictures, but there was a almost like meeting it where it was in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, in real life with your body and taking it in.
yeah,
And it can be with a lot of the footage of what's happening, it may not register as real in the same way. Like,
yeah, yeah,
and some,
yeah. It's definitely different to feel it and smell it. Like even just the smell and the taste, you can almost taste it in the air. It's like every sense was engaged in it. And I would just walked around like really mindfully, took a day to walk around the places that I would spend time. Um,
So, the orienting and the value of orienting, right? And to really take things in, um, of what's happening in one's community. And that's something that can be titrated, right? And the way that Stacy's describing this mindful walking and taking in that actually was supportive and settling her system. So being open and listening, allowing people to share is a big part of this, and connecting about one's experiences with another human being also is a big resource.
But
So I will just share, I think we're going to go to questions next, but I'm just going to I'll just share this last
sharing
one.
their stories, and it's just, yeah, there's something about meeting each other in it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Real human connection. Right?
yeah, yeah.
Heart.
Yeah, and everyone's willing to talk to each other. There's this like, oh, what's your story? What are you doing? Like I would normally wouldn't be like, hey, what are you digging for? You know? I'm like, oh, what's happening? Yeah. But there's a beauty of like when I think about it, when I remember being there, it was like a thank you to that place for having given me so much. I mean, it's just there's so many memories in there's this particular area of the river, and it's the part that got hit the hardest was the place that I would hang out more than any other area of that, place. But there was almost a reverence in a way. Yeah, like heartbreak and reverence at the same time.
Yeah. How do you sense that in your body?
Mm.
Reverence and heartbreak at the same time.
Yeah, that's a very unfamiliar feeling. Like, wow, that's. Yeah, it's God, I can't even quite access it in the body.
Yeah, however it is, just the sense of it.
Yeah,
This,
yeah,
especially this reverence, this quality.
yeah,
When you're saying that, it connects me to like the reverence for the land that held also all of these things and all of the other
exactly.
too, and the people that were involved in that and that created that
Yeah,
place of the river.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And even a reverence for the river that destroyed it in a way. There's a like, God, the force of that water that wasn't seeking to destroy this. It's just the way, like I ran into a volunteer from the forestry department. And he said there was something about the way the river bends right there. Because it's
We'll pause there, but just, the reverence for nature, right? Heartbreak and yet reverence, like reverence for even the powerful forces of that water, right? And that affected the River Arts District in Asheville.
very
Okay. So we're going to pause and for questions. There is, I just want to just make one last comment here. Working with the gut, there's often a gut punch that happens with working with trauma from hurricanes and working with the felt quality in your belly. That gut response to the hurricane, these are slower vagal paths to the gut. So take time to support the gut and recognizing that things are okay. It will then get that message to the brain. The brain will then consolidate that information, right? Oftentimes, if you work with touch at the belly, supporting the system to feel the grounding, it will help to settle a lot of the symptoms that might be happening digestively as well. Okay, so thank you, everybody. I'm gonna just stop the share and we'll go to questions.
Thank you so much, Glyndie. That was amazing. And we do have a couple questions. I want to say one thing very quickly, which is for anybody who's watching this later, because this will be on our website, just a reminder that the demo participant is also an SE practitioner. And so often we forget that sometimes people don't have as much access to their felt senses and the connection to different felt senses from before. And so if you're watching this and you're not an SE practitioner or an SE student, just know that that is something that may feel different. So Glyndie, we do have a couple questions here, and it was a beautiful demo. Thank you. And thank you to Stacy for letting us just share that as well. There's a couple questions, and Stacy actually mentioned this. And so the question is, one super common response I'm seeing that hasn't been mentioned, but then was by Stacy, is guilt. Guilt about not being able, about not doing enough, not as open to receiving help because someone else needs it more. I think that is key, particularly for folks within the SE community. Assuming others are helping more. I think, I loved this word, guiltitude. And so can you speak a little bit to that guilt and the felt sense of that?
Yeah, that's one of the conflicting impulses, right? That's part of those conflicting impulses to do, to not do, right? And so we can have guilt, we can have a really strong feeling of a weightedness to that guilt that's hard to be with. Sometimes, though, if we hang out with the guilt, we will actually rest down a little bit more, because that hyperarousal can be fed by these cognitive messages that I'm not doing enough. I got to keep going. I'm seeing it on the news. I'm hearing it from everybody. Everybody needs help. So how do we support this? And I think Stacy was really great at describing this as well, of how she was aware of it, and also with friends saying, okay, now you've got it. I've got to rest. She talked about day 4. I'm exhausted. Is there a way we can do that, however, without having to collapse? So that we're not just going, go, 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 right? Doing, and then collapsing. Can it be more being and resting down a little bit? And that's a really hard thing when there's an emergency situation happening. So that's something that we as practitioners can really support our clients with, like, can you rest down a little bit now? And yes, there's thoughts, right, around guilt of like, I'm not helping right now. Can we track that? Allow that to release a little bit. Often when people share it, it brings a little bit of inoculation of the force of that guilt and the flight that might be happening away from the feelings, through that going into that hyperarousal and doing again. It's like, no, if I keep doing, then I don't have to feel the guilt, right? And I'm sure a lot of people here can recognize that, if you've been in the hurricane, or I think we can all recognize that anytime there's an emergency situation. So normalizing, humanizing, and just being there and supporting them. Like, is it okay for right now that you can rest down even a tiny iota? Is it okay if you're not the active one right now? Can you be in the receiving mode just for now?
Normalizing and humanizing. I feel like those are core SE concepts kind of across the board. So thank you. Another piece that came up, and it came up in 2 separate questions, around vicarious trauma. So both I'm not in the space, but I'm from there, right? So I'm seeing it even more because of friends and family. I think those of us who don't live in Asheville, and are experiencing it, I think it's important to name today as well, that there are massive floods happening right now in Spain. And our heart is with folks there as well. So this isn't a Asheville issue, right? This is a world issue, we know. But then the same question about vicarious trauma, even for folks within the disaster zone. Excuse me. So this question of, at what point did you know you were going to survive? For those of the people who in the crisis zone knew that, what about the vicarious trauma within the same space? And the sort of the primary and vicarious trauma of both.
Yeah. Yeah. And people can be in both camps. You can have experienced it, and then you're watching and trying to get information about what's happening, and then it perpetuates the hyperarousal and the breaking news over and over again, right? It keeps us clicking, keeps us watching. So disengaging from the news is a really big part of it, because we're actually not orienting. We're orienting to a disaster that's happening somewhere else. And it's really great to feel that impulse to help and to do something, and people donate and do wonderful things, and that's great. But there's also something about spending some time orienting to where you are in your body now, with your nature and your trees. Allow your system to really get that you're not in danger right now. You are physically not in danger right now. And when we're watching things, it can trick the brain into thinking, oh my God, we have to be on alert. We have to do something now. And that's great. And there's a lot of compassion in that, but it has a cost to the nervous system. So we do need to spend time with these wonderful principles of grounding, right? Orienting, and tracking even the slightest iota of settling that can happen. Connect to friends, connect and talk about things other than the hurricane or the flood, right? These things are happening around the world. They're not going to stop happening. So the better we are at managing our own nervous systems, right? And that doesn't mean that we can't act and do something to help people, but we also want to conserve our nervous systems and not get over adrenalized. So we have reserves so that we can really be there for ourselves and others.
Thank you. One hopefully slightly quicker question about the research on orienting to yellows and reds. Is there research on that? Is that anecdotally showing up?
I think there's some, I'm not sure if it's quantitative, but yeah, particularly around the red and the color red and orange.
Oh, red and orange.
Just
Sorry.
I think I said yellow too. Sometimes it can be yellow lights, but flashing things as well as the color will attract our attention. That's why emergency services uses them. And so when we're orienting, you might notice, it might be that you're noticing certain things more, and you'll have more of a propensity to that if you've been exposed to an emergency setting, possibly.
Thank you. And we are definitely, I think we had time for one more, and I apologize. I know there's probably more questions. But somebody's asking about a choice point around, I think when Stacy said, I am here and I'm alive. But then there was something you said about there's more space. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Being aware of more space is the question around
Just
why.
the choice point there, like why one, not the other?
Yeah, so I was tracking in Stacy's body, right, that there would be constriction that would be happening, and then there'd be a little bit more space, and then there'd be a little bit more resting down. So I was just supporting her to just notice the increase in space in her own system. And there was this incremental coming more and more into her body, right? First the chest, and it started to move more. And a little bit later in the session, which you didn't see, she started to talk about the gut punch and tracking the gut. And then there was more of a release in the gut level. So many people who are experiencing natural disaster and the hurricanes, you'll often feel that quality of a gut punch, how we get impacted on that gut level. It's a really important piece to really follow through that can really help release the shock and help us to come back into connection with our whole body, connect to the ground, and be more regulated overall.
Is there a reason the gut is particular in that?
Well, we it is the second it's the second brain, right? It's enteric nervous system. Yeah, we have as many neurons as a cat has or in our gut. It processes things on a level that we're only just beginning to understand. And it's actually the third element. We have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic part of the autonomic system. We also have the enteric nervous system. And it takes longer for us to process things at a gut level, just in terms of how the vagus nerve functions there. And that's something that we address quite a bit in SE, working with the VU response, working with touch at the belly, that can support that. Also, kids get impacted in their gut. They'll talk about tummy trouble with the hurricane. They may also be more clingy, more needy, maybe talking about not being hungry or wanting to not feeling good in their stomach in some way. So just be aware that that is an impact. It is actually the way we process trauma at the gut level.
So true about children. I mean, it's true of all of us and somehow extra true about children. I've got a few closing thoughts, but do you want to say anything before?
No, I just
Glyndie?
want a big thanks to Stacy Butcher. She's an SAP and she's also an SE assistant. And also to the Asheville community, to the Asheville assisting team. There's some folks here from that community. And to everybody out there who's doing amazing work supporting everyone, and also the support you're doing for yourself and your families. Yeah, we'll get through this. Yeah, and also the cool thing about what we're doing with SE is once you get this in your body and you develop this quality of resilience, it helps to inoculate us. It doesn't mean that we're not influenced or feeling that the impact of natural disasters in the future, but it also brings more and more resilience, more and more of a sense of, I have these tools that can help me and people that I know to find that resilience again. So for me, that's really good to be reminded of in myself. And I hope that it's helpful to you out there. Thanks, Rebecca, too.
Oh, thank you, Glyndie. And I'm gonna cry. This always happens. I am so deeply grateful. I can't tell you how much it means to be able to sit with SE practitioners and see the amazing work, feel the amazing work that y'all are doing. And Glyndie, thank you for doing this and sharing all of this. And Stacy, very much thank you for sharing all of that, for sharing yourself with us. I think, those of us who become SE practitioners, we don't do this because we don't want to help people in the world. And these reminders that we also have to learn to help ourselves and the ways to show up in different spaces become super important. I really loved a couple of things that Stacy said. This idea of a normal hangover really sat with me. I think that's something I haven't heard around crises before, but seems very important to take forward from here. And restoration of faith really showed up as a beautiful process through that whole demo and that whole experience. So, Glyndie, thank you so much. I want to make sure folks know this will be available on our website. And again, this one, and then on November 22nd, I think I looked it up and I already forgot the date. Glyndie's doing another webinar for not practitioners, for anybody who's interested. So please share with your communities. Know that we really do want to get information out. SEI does a lot of SE professional certificate training programs. We do those with our organizers around the world as well. And we would love to be able to offer more and more public education. I think you said it, humanize and normalize. If the gift of SE in the world or somatic work in the world is that we can see each other as human first, connect on that level, we will have done our jobs. So thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of this amazing and beautiful community. And to those of you here in Asheville, around the world, recovering from major crises, know that we're holding you. We love you. And we're all in this together to heal together. So thank you.